Hi everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. What we're going to be discussing in this presentation is what we think is one of the most critical issues facing our field today, which is how can we help our graduates find jobs. And we're pretty excited about the kinds of solutions we've been coming up with, and we're really keen to discuss them with you today. So my name is Janie Busby Grant. I'm in the discipline of psychology at the University of Canberra, together with my colleague Amanda George. What we've done is team up with the PostAc project team, and I'll explain them a bit more later on, in particular Ingham Mewburn, who's based at ANU, and the rest of the team, which is based at ANU and CSIRO. So let's talk about a typical psychology graduate. So let's say we have a graduate, Abby. Abby is towards the end of her 3-year degree, and at the end of her degree, she decides she's going to go out and get a job. So the first thing she does is open up a job search engine like this and type in the word psychology, because after all, she got a psychology degree. And the kinds of jobs that pop up when she does this are registered psychology jobs, they're clinical psychology jobs. Most of them require her to have further study, clinical training or registration that she doesn't have. So this is incredibly dispiriting for a lot of our graduates. Depending on what kind of search terms you type in and how you tweak it, you can get a slightly broader range of jobs, but they tend to be fairly narrow in terms of being restricted to that kind of psychology and counselling grouping. This doesn't give you the broad range of jobs that they should be able to get with their training. So who is this an issue for? Well, there's a fair bit of variation between institutions, but broadly, out of every 100 graduates from a 3-year degree, about 30% go on to honours, and about 16% of those continue to a clinical master's or PhD degree. Now, this leaves about 84%, and again, it might be slightly lower or higher at different institutions, but a majority of our graduates who cannot apply for the kinds of jobs you get when you type psychology into a search engine. So where can these 84% go? And a lot of people are doing some fantastic work trying to figure this out. And one of the most common ways people try and figure this out is by looking at our alumni. So where have psychology graduates gone in the past? And so this is a 2015 graduate careers study, which talked about the different categories in which these kind of jobs that graduates find themselves in are. So things like healthcare or education and training. But what this doesn't tell us is really specific jobs. This doesn't tell us what we can tell our students to type in to seek. It doesn't tell us, importantly, where they can go. This only tells us roughly where they currently go. And we get more information from things like the Quilt data. This gives us some great data on graduate employment. And again, these broad categories of jobs. It also tells us something quite worrying, which is that across all the different disciplines surveyed in the Quilt data, psychology has the highest rating of graduates saying their skills aren't being fully used in their current job roles, which again suggests that we have quite a bit of a mismatch there. If you look at APS and other kind of similar websites that help psychology students find careers, a lot of these careers are still focused on the kinds of jobs you can get after a clinical training or registration. They're also focused more on those broad categories, and telling someone they can work in education and training does not necessarily help them find a particular job. This is a 2021 study which again really focused in on those broad categories and didn't differentiate well from a student's perspective on what they can actually apply for with a 3 or a 4-year degree. This is a fantastic website by Deakin University that tries to hone down a bit more narrowly, looking at these different categories and lists some specific jobs under there. But this still doesn't give us a live way of students knowing what jobs they can apply for. And it's still, these are still very typical career options. So these are very obvious options that you could apply kind of psychology training to. They don't reach the full range of careers that could be out there for our graduates. So what do we actually need? We need a way of identifying practical and specific job options. So we need a way, when a student comes up to us and says, what can I do? We need a way of walking over to something like Seek, typing something in and showing them the jobs that they can actually do based on a 3 or a 4 year degree. We need to figure out where they can go. What are these opportunities that our students not doing? You know, we know that by the time they finish our degree, they have some fantastic skills and some fantastic ways of working with people, and these really aren't being used in all the jobs that they can go to. We also need a way of plotting out and planning ahead for our entire field. Where are these jobs and how can we look at them over subsequent years? So who is this a problem for? Well, we've been used to largely thinking of this as a problem for graduates and I guess for employers as well, because they're missing out on some of our fantastic graduates if they don't know that psychology students would be appropriate. But it's also obviously a problem for academics as well. When we are designing our courses, when we're coming up with work integrated learning placements, if the majority of our students are not going on to academic or clinical roles, where can they go and how should that be informing our course design? It's also a problem for our organisations in the sector and how we communicate, all of us, academics and our organisations, with government, with other members of the university, in terms of what psychology is good for, what psychology graduates can do, where can they go. We're very optimistic about this, but we lack real data to back up our claims about how much our graduates can actually contribute to all different sectors of society. What we really need is a way of kind of searching through every job advertisement that's advertised online and identifying not the word psychology, but identifying in the job descriptions what are the attributes and skills that psychology students have that are named in those job descriptions. If we had that, if we had some kind of measure of psychiness, so how psyche is each particular job, imagine what we could do. Okay, we could say to our students, here you go, here's a way of searching all the jobs and how psyche they are, which ones will be good for you, specific jobs. We could identify jobs that have never thought of hiring psychology graduates before, but what they're doing is listing in their job advertisements exactly the skills we're talking about. We could tailor our courses. We could find a whole range of will opportunities. We could predict market trends, and then we could look at planning and describing how we as a discipline can contribute to society and communicate that with schools, with government bodies, with senior exec in our institution, for example. So this is where PostAc comes in, because PostAc is a group or an app based at ANU and CSIRO that have developed a job search engine for PhD graduates. Because it turns out that when you're trying to look for a job for a PhD graduate, most jobs don't use the word PhD. What they do is list all the skills and attributes that you gain during a PhD. So using machine learning, the PostAc team developed an algorithm that searches live jobs and then assigns them all a nerdiness index. And all the jobs that are high in nerdiness are therefore appropriate for PhD students. Now, it should be fairly obvious, as it was obvious to us, that this is a parallel problem to what we're facing here in psychology. If machine learning can identify PhD graduate jobs, why not psychology graduate jobs? So Amanda and I wandered down the road to ANU and said, how about we come up with a PostAc app that can do the same thing, but for psychology graduates instead? And so that's what we've done. So the first thing we had to do is work out what were those skills and attributes. So we sat down with all the publications we could find on psychology skills and attributes, and we pulled in 3 experts to form an expert group to work with us to identify what those skills and attributes were. So we had Ian Walker, who's been a head of discipline at a number of different departments of psychology around Australia and worked in industry. We've got Jackie Cranny, who needs no introduction, who's Australia's expert on graduate attributes for psychology students. And we have Nadine Brayley, who's an expert in work integrated learning in the psychology space. So this was a fantastic group, and we spent a lot of time together really pulling apart what are these key skills and attributes and how we could apply them to particular jobs. Then we did a lot of boring, a lot of hand coding to work out, to apply those skills and attributes to particular jobs that would then let us train our machine learning at a later step. And this required a lot of discussion and working out which skills were best for making those decisions. And this is where we are now. So we're in the process of finalizing this machine learning algorithm to find jobs and that have high psychiness scores. So PostAc for PhD uses this kind of cutoff. Anything beyond this certain level of nerdiness should be shown to PhD students looking for jobs, and we'll use a similar kind of idea. Now, this is only preliminary data, but already we've found that really early on, the machine learning algorithm can identify jobs with this high level of psychiness at a reasonable level of accuracy, and we're working on improving that accuracy as we go on. So that's really exciting. And some of the things we're seeing coming out of this is identification of jobs, as we said, that don't actually involve the word psychology, but talk about a lot of the skills and attributes that our students have. So this means we're pretty confident now, we can use this kind of machine learning to provide a live search engine for students that ranks jobs on how psyche they are. So in the future, there's obvious applications for this in terms of running a live search application. It allows us as academics to identify job opportunities. We can do a whole lot of analysis on where those job opportunities are and perhaps where they're not currently being best used. We can make predictions about those jobs. So, for example, the current PostAc team have just released a report analysing the effect of COVID-19 on PhD job advertisements. So this is the kind of analysis we'd be able to do as well. So there's a lot we can do and a lot we can use this data for to communicate to all sorts of people and organisations out there why psychology can contribute so much and where specifically it can contribute in terms of our graduates. All right, we are really excited about this project, but what we need is people to help us refine it. What does this product need to do? What kind of outcomes do students want? Do academics want? How can we really make this the best that we can? So we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at PostAc Psych if you'd like to be involved, or use that QR code to fill out your details and we'll get back to you to talk about the project. So thank you so much for listening to us today, and we're really keen to see where this goes.